Hello, everyone. My name is Dina Yassin, and I'm the Operations Manager at Climate Tracker. Welcome to our first ever Africa Community Hangout. We're really excited to have you, and we're really excited to have this conversation with you. Like I said, my name is Dina Yassin. I'm the Operations Manager at Climate Tracker, and I'm from Sudan. And we're really here today to hang out with you all and to use this as an opportunity to connect and to get to know each other and also discuss the main thing that we have, which is why Africa needs climate journalism. This is a live event and we will be also live tweeting this event. So if you're interested, please join us on Twitter using the Climate Tracker Hangout hashtag and tag Climate Tracker if you want, and we'll be able to retweet your tweets. Let's create as much engagement on Twitter as possible. And again, thank you all so much for being on time. And I'm very, very excited for this session. We have two wonderful speakers who are joining us today. I'll start with our first speaker, our first awesome speaker, who is Hezron. Hezron Kimari is a Kenyan journalist with a diploma holder in mass communication and experience of 8 years with KTN News based in the Kenyan coast. Hezron is interested in food security, conservation, weather, climate reporting in the region. He has done wonderful reporting. He is actually a current fellow at Climate Tracker in our Food and Farming Fellowship, and he is determined in uplifting the livelihood of the community by bridging the gap between public and policymakers relating to food security, to conservation, and climate change. Hezron will be telling us about his personal experience as a climate journalist in Kenya, and I'm really excited to hear about it. Hezron, the floor is all yours. Please go ahead.
Wow, many thanks, Lina, for this wonderful opportunity. As he has just introduced myself, I'm Hezron Kimari. I'm a trained journalist, diploma in mass communication, and have been working with several media houses, but I've been working with KTN for the last 8 years now. Maybe concerning our today's discussion or our hangout is basically talking about the why does Africa really need climate journalism? Maybe just to mention a few in Kenya, or that is in Kenya or in Africa, you see, quite for some time, most of the countries or most of the nations in Africa have really been having the effect of climate change. It's really the effect of climate change is very big in Africa, and also maybe to narrow down to Kenya and especially in Taita Taveta County in the coast region, you will find at some point most of the rivers they're kind of drying up, and also most of the forests have really been reduced. The forest cover has reduced due to cutting down of trees by the community. So all this has really affected, and also maybe there is also challenge in most of the farmers, most of the community in Kenya or in Africa have not been having enough food due to challenges of erratic rainfall, which has been it has really taken for some time now in Africa and also in Kenya. And also, this also has also affected the whole matter of even the rivers, the drying up of rivers, and also. So with all these challenges, which have been facilitated or maybe have been as a result of the climate change due to the global warming, due to the emission of green gases from the developed countries. So all these are some of the challenges that are facing Africa and also in Kenya. Which as a journalist, I think it's very important for the country, for the Africa to have a journalist. And why do I say journalists are very key to participate in climate change in Africa or the climate effects in Africa? Simply because um, uh, journalists are the ones who are bridging the gap. You understand? So by bridging the gap, and also journalists or the media, they are the only the voice of the voiceless. So as from the view of Africa, the effect of climate change in Africa and the global warming, for some time, the voice of the African countries and also in Kenya have not been heard by the developed countries or by the stakeholders who are, at some extent, they should be taking into considerations the effects, the effects by kind of maybe reducing the effects of the climate change or the global warming. So, but it doesn't come like that, because also by the journalists, they have to understand. First thing, the journalists themselves, they have to understand what it takes being a climate or a climate journalist, because for a journalist to be able to convey the right information to the community or to the public or to the stakeholders, he or she first has to understand the whole concept of weather, or what are the effects, right? What are the opportunities that the communities or in these different countries can tap to, maybe on one way or the other, to see how they can reduce or they can curb the increasing effects of climate change in Africa or in the world. So first, the journalists themselves, they have to have that the knowledge, the know-how of all the whole matter. But again, to some extent, there's a challenge. There's a challenge, as in maybe to mention why also until now there is really need for the climate journalism in Africa, is because the number of climate journalists in Africa, it's very few. Yeah, and you may ask yourself, why are the climate journalists in Africa very few? One thing is you'll find there's in most of the media houses, right? In most of the media houses, they have not really given enough airplay or enough airtime in the newsrooms to accept or to air, to air or to advocate any conservation programs, climate change programs, maybe inviting those experts to educate the community, maybe even to discuss this issue, right? So, but by this also, it has kind of discouraged some of those few journalists who are interested in climate, in reporting on climate change and also conservation. So this is one of the challenge, and I'll be sharing with you a number of challenges that journalists in Africa or in Kenya have been facing, keeping concerning climate change and global warming in the world. And another challenge is journalists. Most of the journalists in Africa or in Kenya, they do sponsor themselves. What do I mean by saying they do sponsor themselves? Because most of the companies, they don't really maybe facilitate the traveling part of it or the logistic part of it. So to some extent, you'll find most of the journalists, they find, oh, it can be very expensive, because traveling from one point to another, for one funding him or herself from the pocket, it can be a bit tricky. So this is one of another challenge that are facing journalists in Africa. And also another challenge is there's kind of a shying away of the stakeholders, or maybe the government or the relevant authorities who are at one or the other. They should be the ones who will be are supposed to share information to the journalists. So you'll find some of the journalists, it is hard. It takes them really difficult to kind of get the right information or feedback, to get some authoritative information from the relevant maybe government agencies or even private institutions. So this also, to some extent, it has kind of led to some journalists or reporting and kind of, let me say, unbaked and fully baked information, right? So it does not give a good vision, or does not give a good picture to maybe to the consumers, to the public, who are one way or the other. They need to understand very well what does this particular journalist is reporting, because without facts, without figures, it does not go well in reporting. So and another challenge that has been facing journalists in climate journalism in Africa is the whole aspect of at some point journalists, they have, or anyone who does a good thing to some extent, he or she wants to kind of maybe to be appreciated, right? So for the few who are kind of doing their way, they are using their own resources, they're taking their own time to maybe to educate, to or to inform the masses. To some extent, maybe the stakeholders, stakeholders I'm saying, maybe the government, or even and other partners, to some extent, they don't really kind of appreciate, to make them feel like what they are doing actually it's in real something which is good, and someone somewhere is valuing what they are doing. And another challenge that journalists also are facing is the challenge, let me allow me to check here. So yes. So some of the challenges that journalists are facing, you will find this lack of good equipment, right? So as a journalist, you need to have you need to be well equipped for you to be able to gather enough information, maybe to get a good picture, to send the message that you are intending to sell the message to. And also, so by all these, the challenges of that are facing journalists in Africa, as much as we really need the journalists in Africa, especially climate journalism in Africa, but there are all these challenges that they are facing the journalists in Africa. So at one point on the other, they need also to be addressed. And I can maybe to point a little bit of maybe what could be possible solutions, right? Yeah, one thing that I think it's very good, it's very key to be taken, or to be considered by the stakeholders, also by and even the government. It's journalists, whenever they knock the doors to any office, I think it's a right time for the government, or for the officers to be able to share the information right without any delay, because again, you don't expect a journalist having a timeline, and maybe an officer is kind of saying, okay, maybe wait until maybe tomorrow, wait until some weeks. So this all takes some time. Some extent also it discourages some of the journalists, but also there is need for training more journalists in Africa, and also in Kenya, and also in Africa, on the need, on the importance of reporting on climate change and conservation, and also on food security matters, simply because these are the key pillars. Without any food, any country is not stable. We cannot do without food, and again, food security, it cannot come, or we cannot actualize food security in our country or in our continent without considering the effects, or without looking into the effects of climate change, which are really affecting the amount of rainfall. The rivers are drying. So so the journalists, they have to be trained, to be informed, to be well equipped with the right information, which they are supposed to convey to the public, or to the masses. And another thing is, it is the right time for the media houses to start to giving an opportunity, or a special program, or in the newsrooms, to focus on climate change matters and also on food security matters. There are quite over a number of, there are few media houses in Kenya who they have a special program or a special segment focusing on food security, conservation, and kind of a climate change. But I think there is really more that is need to be done by the media houses in Africa to give enough airplay for any matters that are, or any reporting that is relating to food security. And another thing, you understand, sometimes journalists, we can be reporting, but if for some time a journalist is reporting or writing on a certain issue, but some extent there is no good feedback, right? There is no outcome. I think it is the right time now in Africa. We need to have also journalists who is the activism, right? The activism in journalism is now, that is, you as a journalist yourself, you can start initiating, yeah? You can start driving the agenda so that after reporting for maybe for 1 year, for 2 years, but you are not seeing anything coming out from the government, from the relevant organizations. So I think it is the right time for journalists also we have activism in journalism, which will help in driving the message right directly to maybe to the targeted audience. And more specific here, when we talk about the effects of global warming, the effects of climate change in Africa and also in Kenya, they are really, really bad. And it is the right time for a bit of activism in the whole matter. And another thing is it is also the right time maybe to start engaging other stakeholders. Yeah, stakeholders. I mean, also the government it can introduce, or organization, they can introduce in schools, right? We understand it is very key to have to inform, or to inform the young ones, the young generation, the importance of learning or preserving our natural resources, of not actually participating in anything that is one way or the other. It may lead to the negative effects of climate change. So I think it's also the right time for the government, right? Also the partners, the stakeholders in Africa, to start engaging or introducing climate and weather and climate classes in the schools, so that the young generation they are coming, they can really understand the importance and the value of taking care of our resources. And another thing is increasing the funding. I think the government also, yeah, also or even the stakeholders, they may need to kind of increase the funding part of it, because all this, they cannot come to success without funding. There is a cost aspect which is included somewhere. So there's need for increasing funding in any activity that is towards maybe improving the aspect, improving conservation, training journalists. So there is need for to improve or to increase more funding towards this. So maybe Lina, you'll let me know when my time is about to, so that I cannot maybe consume my colleagues' time.
You have 2 extra minutes, and then we can go to questions.
Okay, thank you. So allow me to wind up by saying, indeed, by my explanation or my presentation, I think it is very key, and this is the right time that we might be a bit late, but again, it's never late, and we can still have another time, and this is a platform, and I'm very happy that we are having this discussion. It is the right time now. We synergize. We work as a team, not only in Kenya but in Africa, across the continent, in the world. once for a while having this kind of discussions to engage. At some point also we can be engaging even the community on what are their views towards seeing how possible we can really solve this problem. Maybe with that, let me say thank you for the opportunity. Let me allow Lina to guide, maybe if there'll be any questions that which will be asked from those who are listening or they are following up. Maybe I'll be able to respond to them. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Hezron. Thank you so much for this really insightful talk and for sharing your personal experiences. You really have highlighted some of the main challenges that face journalists in Africa. And I like your final point about how we should not be looking at this from a country perspective, and we should try and look at it from a continent perspective, like what can African journalists do together, because journalism is very important. It is the way to bridge the gap between the scientists and the science behind climate change and the normal citizens. And I think this is why we aim to have conversations like this community hangout, because we want to bring people together. We want to have a chance to get to allow people to share their experiences, their perspectives, and see how we can collaborate even beyond this conversation. So thank you so much, Hezron. And now we have around 10 minutes for questions. For our first question, I will call out on Kevin. Kevin, are you with us? Kevin, if you can hear us, please unmute yourself. Okay, Kevin is, he is with us, but can you please unmute yourself, Kevin, or just let us in the chat if you won't be able to ask the question? Okay, in the meantime, Kevin might be facing technical issues. So in the meantime, I'll start with my question, because your talk, Hezron, has inspired me to ask you one question that I always get asked, and I would really love to get your perspective on it. I wanted to know, from your experience, how do you communicate with your audience? Because climate journalism is not just about the challenges that you face as a journalist from the technical side and the challenges that you face from the logistical side, but it's also, and usually people are not aware that these problems are related to climate change, and that the daily challenges that they face in their life is actually linked to climate change. So how do you speak to them? Like, what's the best way that was effective in your experience?
Well, thank you, Lina. First, as I said, as a journalist, you have to understand what you have to have the facts with you. Yeah, you have to understand the whole concept. Like now, when reporting on climate change or anything, first you have to understand what is this particular information you need to send or to tell your audience or your yes, the masses, right? So after understanding, after having the facts with you, yeah, because you don't just spread, you don't just report on rumors. So then you need to ask yourself, which are the best ways of conveying this message? Because first you need to to ask who are the targeted audience. If you will be targeting the people who are in the villages, right? There is a way to package your message. If you'll be targeting people who are living in towns, there is a way to package your message. And also, are you the channel that you will be using to convey the message? Will it really have enough reach? Like, why should you go to television and not go to newspaper and not go to radio? And maybe why should you just choose to select on Facebook or maybe on Twitter or on YouTube? This by understanding the type of package that you need to deliver or to share with your audience, it will really give you the best way to look which medium to sell out the information, because you can't be targeting the people in the grassroots in the remote areas, and then you share your information on Facebook. because in the grassroots, in the villages, maybe quite a number of people, they don't own smartphones, they don't have the internet. So you may choose to go for radio, yeah, to use a radio as a way of passing the information. And maybe if you need to, if the radio does not reach enough, you need some visual part of it to show how maybe people are really starving, the starvation, the level of drought in one of the part, maybe there is maybe animals are dying off. So this is the way when you need to have maybe TV, right? So me personally, as Hezron, as I'm a journalist, being a journalist, reporting on climate and food security and conservation, by having all this, I've been knowing which way should I use to send my information. I cannot say I've been using only Facebook. I cannot say I've been also only using Twitter or TV or newspaper. But if you know who are your targeted audience, you'll be able to package, know which way you can use it. I think I've answered you.
Thank you so much, Hezron. That's definitely a good answer, and I think it's you mentioned something important, which is diversifying your the way you talk to people. So not using one tool is important, because this way you get to reach different audiences, and I think that's the aim. When you're a climate journalist, you try to speak to as many people as possible in as many tools as possible. So thank you so much. We have a question.
Maybe if I can add something, you'll allow me. Yes, sure. Yes. At some point, you understand. The community in the villages, they may not be able to understand in English, right? Or Swahili. So you as a journalist, because you need this information to be delivered, yeah, to the key, to the real targeted audience. So at some point, as a journalist, you need also to translate, yeah, which information, which language are you using? Will we be speaking in English? Will we be speaking in Swahili? Will we be speaking in the mother tongues? Yeah, so that, because at the end of the day, you need to see the feedback, a good feedback, and for you to get a feedback, the communication cycle must be complete. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Hezron. So we have a couple of questions. I'll take two, and please, if you can answer within 1 to 2 minutes, that would be great, so we can move to the next part. Yes. Our first question is from Kevin. Kevin said he wanted to ask you what you think in a specific Kenyan context is the future of youth-led investigative journalism, considering our challenging landscape.
Sorry, come again.
What do you think?
Yes.
In a Kenya context, what do you think is the future of youth-led investigative journalism, considering our challenging landscape in Kenya specifically?
Well, maybe to first, let me say thank you for Kevin for that question. What I can say is there's a still bright future for investigative journalism in Kenya, despite the challenges that we are facing, despite the challenges of terrain, simply because one, as I said, at some point, where we also need to have self-driven. You have to, if you choose to specialize in one some area, so you need to have kind of a passion in it, right? So it has to be a self-driven towards achieving your goal. So and then another thing, I think by having increasing our networks, right? Increasing our networks, our partnership, because we cannot work as alone. I cannot work as an individual without having good networks, with good partners who are really like-minded people who can really support. Like now, when you're talking about maybe conservation, or maybe you're talking about investigative, there are those in a specific or some organization who are very supportive, can be very supportive in line of maybe facilitating, maybe equipping some of those who are showing the interest, in reporting, like what Kevin has said, maybe in investigative journalism. So I think the future is still bright. Only what we need is aggressiveness, and also we need to look for more networking, because we cannot do alone. We have to have a backup and a support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hebron. Our second question and last question for this session will be from Iradu Kunda. Can you please unmute yourself and ask the question if you want to? And I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the name wrong. Iradu Kunda?
Yes, good morning. You
Hi.
can hear me? Yes,
yeah,
hello.
we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon too.
My question, I have only one question. You've been telling us about food security as
Yes.
one of the motto, or as one of the reasons we should be more in covering environment or climate change, or what goes with the climate. So my question is, apart from food security, can you suggest why should we also, what are other, maybe are other, let's take other skills or other scopes, or we should be relying on in covering climate change or in covering the environment? Is it only food security, or there are other pillars?
Sorry, is it only of food security, or?
Yes, or there are other means, or food security, or there are other means or other.
I don't know whether your network, I'm not getting you the last part of it.
So Hezron, I think the question was if you can give more examples of critical topics related to climate change that journalists should cover, because you mentioned food security, but I was also interested in knowing other topics.
Yes, yeah. Yes. Food security is one of them, and also we, as a journalist, you can still try to see how you can, because climate change has affected. It's very wide. The effects it's not only, does not only affect food security, because you will find like you can report on health, because at the end of the day, with the change of climate. There are kind of there are some diseases or some illness, some of the, let me say maybe due to because at some point there are those what can I say, there are those other effects of climate change. Maybe to mention about wildlife, right? You can also report on wildlife, which one way or the other, the effects of climate change is really affecting the pastures. The wildlife is not getting enough food in pastures. Also, there is no water. You can still cover a story on. You can still do a story on health that is relating to climate change at the end of the day, because by climate change, it is affecting the mode of rainfall, and if it affects the mode of rainfall, we will not have good food security, and you see, food security, you cannot really run away from food security, because by you having good health, you'll be able to work. By you having a good health, enough food. You need to have a good food, not just food, but nutrition, for you to be able to be healthy. So you can still open up. It is very wide. You can still not only focusing on food security, but you can open up your mind, reporting on health stories, on wildlife, on conservation, and also on industrial part of it, because you can still focus on if are there maybe companies who are maybe assisting, doing in conservation, maybe kind of returning back to the community. So it's not only food security, but you can open up the discussion even to other topics.
Thank you so much, Hezron. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry, I see a lot of questions. We'll see if we have time at the end to address the rest of the questions. But thank you so much, Hezron, for this really insightful talk and for this really insightful conversation. And thanks everyone for those who asked the questions. I think now we can move to our next speaker, who I'm also really excited about. Our next speaker is from Nigeria and is also a climate tracker alumni and a previous fellow in different fellowships that we had. And some of you might have known her because she has spoken some of our trainings. Jennifer is a freelance investigative journalist. She has built quite the reputation in journalism in Nigeria by working for some of the country's prestigious media firms, such as the Pointer newspaper, Delta State Broadcasting Service, and the International Center for Investigative Reporting. She will be talking to us today about her personal experience as a journalist from Nigeria, but also about the climate narratives in Africa, and giving us tips and experience and lessons from her experience. Jennifer, the floor is all yours.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Please can you confirm if you can hear me? Just a little
yes, we can hear you.
Fine. Okay, awesome. So my name is Jennifer and I'm happy being here. And I actually took some time to go through the participant list, and I saw some people that I've met before. Someone like Oge and Hi Suleiman. I've seen some Nigerians. So it's good to be here, and I hope that by the end we'll all learn from each other. But I think that today what we'll be talking about in my own section is actually the climate narrative. Personally, so circle it down to what we're talking about, being why Africa needs climate journalists. I believe that we need to tell the stories about climate journalists as Africans because it's an opportunity to rewrite our own narrative, the African narrative, or at least a little bit part of it. So that's one of the importance of this hangout today. And yes, climate change affects all of us, or environmental issue affects us, but I would want to submit that it affects everybody or most countries differently. And Hezron has actually helped to lay some foundations to what I'll be talking about. So hello? Okay, sorry, I think my network.
Yes, we can hear you. No worries,
yeah.
You can proceed.
All right, so I think that in talking about African narrative, the issue here today is how to shape your own story. So all of us here, we are all journalists, I want to believe. Even if you're not a journalist, you are interested in climate change in one way or the other. So there's so many ways you can actually start looking at the narrative. And that was why when Hezron started answering the questions about how the stories that we can tell about climate change in Africa, that was actually a very big eye-opener, and then I already have some things noted. So when we're talking about climate reporting, I've done some climate reporting stories, some climate change story, environmental stories in the past, and I'm still doing some now. So I think that one thing we can be doing is, and also please feel free, if you have a question, feel free to also stop me along the way, because this is a hangout. It's not a straitjacket kind of a meeting. So take, for instance, our narrative. If we don't tell our stories, other people will tell our story and they will tell it the wrong way. So we have issues of flooding in Nigeria, for instance, and I live in Abuja. The fact that I live in the capital of my state doesn't mean that climate change don't affect me, and it doesn't mean that I'm not sensitive about what is happening. So the effects of this, the flooding actually is widespread. So when we're talking about telling stories about climate change or telling our own narrative about as Africans, it's actually bigger than we think. So flooding, for instance, would necessarily it could definitely make people to migrate. So when you have an issue of, okay, 4 houses was swept away by flood, I would want to tell you that more than 20 persons, or at least 20 persons, stayed in those houses. And those are the stories, those are the people behind the number that you see in climate change. Those are the narratives you want to start talking about. You want to start saying, people are suffering and people are leaving their home. So when you're talking about food insecurity. Yes, food insecurity, when we're talking about climate change, is actually very huge. And you might think that that's the only narrative in climate change, but then it's still connected to flooding, because most persons, especially the farmers, they're the ones that stay in these areas and they farm. And unfortunately, in the rural areas, these are where flooding get to affect people more. So when there is a flooding or when their house gets swept away, they would have to move. So climate change, what it does is that it exacerbates displacement. People move and people become internally displaced in their home. And this is another narrative that you can even pose. So climate change makes people leave their home. And then that's not the end of the problem. I recently published a story. I think I will share the link when I get to probably at the end. It's a story about IDPs in one of the states here in Nigeria. And it's actually it looked at gender-based sexual violence. So when people leave home and they have to settle in informal camps, what happened to them? Women are endangered. Women have to offer sexual favors for food sometime. And these are actually vices that when you write your story or you are building your narrative, you can build your narrative around this. So from flooding, someone is being displaced. From displacement, someone is being, what's the word now? Subjected to sexual violence. And so when a farmer leaves his home or his community, the possibility of him going back home to his farm is very low. So we still have that issue of food insecurity. And food insecurity, I know that some of you already talked about this part, but I will just say for my own benefit. When we're talking about food insecurity, we're not just talking about food not being available. So if you're telling your story or you're giving your narrative, it will be much more better if you can build your story around a narrative that is very relatable. So the problem is not that we don't really have so much reporters doing climate journalism. The issue here is also how to relate the everyday issue, everyday problem that we have to climate change. So when there is food insecurity, automatically people get pushed down to below the poverty line. Nigeria have more than 80 million, I think I am sure, more than 80 million people that are impoverished or living below the poverty line. So if there is food insecurity, you can actually link your reports to, okay, fine, there is food insecurity now, people are getting poor. So that's another narration for you. And that's the African story. That's the kind of story that we need to be telling. And you can even go further. So there is malnutrition. And when we're talking about malnutrition, it's very easy for people to assume that, oh, when it has to do with malnutrition, we're talking about people that we can see, people that we can relate to. We are talking about Jennifer. No, malnutrition goes way more than that. Imagine the pregnant lady who is non-nourished, who doesn't get all the nutrients that she wants or she needs. And then what happens is that the child of the baby is malnourished, and it affects the baby's the child's growth or even development. And this issue can be transgenerational, because neurological issues sometimes it definitely can be transgenerational. So these are ways that you can start building your narration. These are ways you can start arranging them. So when you are talking about climate change, you are telling people that climate change from this point. So if there is a flooding, people are leaving home, and definitely the one other issue that we'll be having is people will be internally displaced. Persons will be exposed to gender-based violence. Persons will be then will have high food insecurity, and then people will be poor. There is that possibility of people going down below the poverty line. And there's also malnutrition. There's chronic diseases that could come up because of this. And I would also want to point out at this point that climate change, if we're going to tell our story, we have to tell it from the aspect understanding that climate change also can be man-made and natural at the same time. So man-made and natural. When I would talk about the man-made aspect of it, and also the narrative that you can build around this kind of story. So when people, I stay in Nigeria, and unfortunately, we still use plastic bags, and people still dump refuse in sewage in sewage systems. And what happens is that they could get blocked. I mean, they do get blocked. And when they are blocked, the canals can break open and they flow into freshwater bodies. If you don't eat fish, I totally understand that, but I do eat fish. If you don't eat fish, you have a friend also that eats fish. But those plastics, they contain certain chemicals that are actually injurious for the body or to our system. And then we get to eat it. And it's in our body, and then that's also a health issue. So if you're looking for ways that we can connect it, there's a million and one ways that we can start telling our stories, and not just limiting it to the part that, oh, Africa doesn't emit enough green gases to be like their developed counterpart, to be like, okay, fine, we don't have to worry. No, we need to worry, and we don't have to wait to the point when we start emitting so much to start telling our stories or to try to rewrite our narrative. If we don't tell our stories the proper way, then we wouldn't know how to work on this issue. And then apart from the water pollution and marine life being endangered, there is also this issue of, there's an issue of, I would want to call it climate injustice. Don't forget that I'm still talking to you about the man-made part now. I mean, we've handled the flooding and everything. Flooding can be man-made and also at the same time not be man-made. But when it has to do with climate justice, I would want to say something like, I don't know if you've heard it, but I've heard this term of my money for your resources. So you have communities that international organizations, especially, it can even be, let's not say international organizations, let's say non-nationals, people that are not from the same country. They go to communities, they start doing mining activities, and then they contaminate the environment. An example that comes to my mind readily is a story that a friend of mine did. He used to work for the cable Nigeria, but now he's with the AFP, Chinedu Asadu. So he did a story about a Chinese company who was running their operations here, a mining operation in Abuja. And the affluence of this operation was flowing into the major stream, the major water that communities were using. They would bathe with it, they would farm with it, they would drink from it. That's the thing. I think if you start looking at your narration and the fact that when these kind of things are going on, you can afford to use treated water. I think that there are so many stories that you can tell, or so many narrations that you can tell as an African journalist. So some of us can actually afford to have treated water in our homes, but don't forget that there are people that are living in rural areas and they drink directly from the stream. So these are just kind of stories or narrations that you can start looking at. And these are kind of story ideas. There are stories that I would want to work on personally. And still on climate injustice or environmental injustice, we have companies. I'm currently working on a story for Journalism EU. And the story is actually about e-waste dumping and cooling system. When it comes out, I'm going to share. And I'm looking forward to all the inputs and all the ways you think that we could have done a better work. But actually, the story is looking at dumping of cooling systems, cooling appliances, and the focus is on refrigerators and on ACs. So what happened is that during our investigation, we found that companies, or let's not say companies, or maybe recycling companies, and they also in collaboration too with some people, they import those goods into Nigeria. And it's not just a Nigerian issue. So I know that the same thing is happening in Kenya, because this project is a cross-border project. It's happening also in Cameroon, it's happening in Ghana, and then in Nigeria. So it could be happening in your own country. We found that this appliances, they have refrigerants. These are the things that make your food get cold and then preserve them. But those refrigerants, they're actually not healthy and they're not environmentally safe. They're supposed to have been phased out. But unfortunately, we still have countries shipping this kind of things into our country. They bring it here and we unintentionally, we use them. And there are leachates that proceed from these things and they contaminate our food. And even our health also, because it's been linked to cancer, it's been linked to to kidney blockage. So these are just the kind of stories you can do. These are the kind of narrations you would want to form around. So a new company comes to your community, amazing story, it's good, it's awesome for development. But the thing is, you can start looking as a climate journalist, are there certain activities that this company is doing or is running? Are there things that could be affecting the environment that I want people to know about? And you start hearing about things about like sporadic rainfall and erratic rainfalls. Those are actions sometimes that are not just man-made. Some of them are also they're not just natural. Some of them are man-made. And if I will still refer back to the project I just spoke about, some of these organic chemicals that are in these refrigerants, they escape and they get trapped in the air. So what goes up will come down. So what happens is that when it rains,
I think Jennifer, can you hear us? Okay. Let's give it 1 minute. I think Jennifer is re-entering the room. Just 1 minute, guys.
Hi everyone. I don't know if that was my fault, but I apologize nonetheless.
No worries. You can continue.
Okay, so like I was saying, some of those chemicals, they get trapped in the atmosphere, and when rain forms, when they fall down straight on both of us, like on all of us. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't even matter if you're within this area where it's contaminated. The issue is that it gets spread, and it's actually a very big challenge to us. But then before I end about on this narration or how we can tell our story, climate reporting or climate stories, it's not always bad. There's still a good part to it. And actually there are really amazing job creation opportunities that you can start looking at. So I guess that's the area where we start talking about solution journalism now. So Africa has so much solar resources. So you can start asking the question of how is it helping us? How is it helping people move to cleaner source of energy? So these are areas that you can start looking at. There are so many things that we can talk about, but before Lizanne will send me an email and I don't respond to those, I'm very bad at it. I think I'm going to stop here so that we'll have more time to talk about this issue and answer questions, and also have a good wrap up and manage our time properly. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for sharing this really great overview of the topics that people can talk about when it comes to climate change. And like you mentioned, climate change is such a big topic that you can basically link it to anything. And it's really important to not just report on the negative, but also look at the bright side of it, the solution journalism, and the really great opportunities that could come out of it. This is something that I really like to say most of the times, is that we should not just look at climate change as a thing that is threatening our life, but we should also look at it as an opportunity for a better future for Africa. And I think this is really important. So thank you so much for highlighting that. And we will take a couple of questions. Our first person to ask questions is Caroline. Are you with us? Caroline, if you are with us, can you please unmute yourself? Caroline, can you hear us? You are with us, but I'm not sure if you can hear us. Okay, let's give it a couple of minutes. If not, I can then call on Jonathan, because Jonathan wanted to share some comments. Okay, Jonathan, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, Lina.
Oh. Hi, Caroline. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so, sorry about that. Yeah, but looks like most of my questions have been answered. But my question would have gone to Hezron. So I don't know if I should ask him now or we... Should I?
Yes, please. We want to have this as a discussion now, so please go ahead. And
Oh.
Jennifer can maybe also chip in.
All right, thanks. So thank you so much, Ezron, for your insights. Part of your presentation was about access to data, especially in Kenya and maybe most parts of Africa. So I'm wondering, working on climate articles, I'm also a freelance writer. So sometimes you need to back up your content with scientific data or rather concrete data. So what do you do in the event that you don't get access to this data, yet you really need it? So maybe you can give us some options where we can get more information. I think that will really help most of us who are freelancing. And then second question, which I'm not sure we'll answer, is with regards to maybe political threats, political influences, or rather political hindrances, which is very common in the environment field, or when you are dealing with an investigative story on environmental issues, because in the context of Africa, I think almost everything is either decided by the politicians or someone who is powerful, a business person. So when you try to touch on a forest or some sort of encroachment, you find that there's a politician or a powerful person who is already there trying to maybe bribe you, silence you, or do something of a sort. So what do you do as journalists to ensure that you still deliver a good job despite all those obstacles? So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for your two questions. Let me start with the last one. Yes, it's true that within this our industry, there is a lot of political pressures and political, and especially now in Kenya, we are almost nearing to our general election next year. So and again, most of the media houses, yeah, they are kind of owned by politicians. That's another thing, right? So at one way or the other, politics, lack of goodwill from the political class, it has really been hindering the efforts by the journalists in reporting on climate change issues, or on, because at the end of the day, for example, you are working in a media house which is owned by a politician, but again, him being a policymaker in the parliament, he knows maybe very well, he or she knows very well that one way he has failed, right? So this particular politician, he may not really allow you to report a story or to paint, to highlight the challenges. He will not really like giving an airtime to the community in the villages, the farmers, because for he or she understand very well, it is because of him that the lack of making good policies, and also pushing for the implementation of already existing policies, because some countries like in Kenya, we are not really short of policies, right? But there is really a big problem in the implementation part of it. And maybe to answer your first question of how, as a journalist, do you work without facts? Well, at the end of the day, you can't really report on rumors. That is one thing that you need to keep in mind. But at the end of the day, you will report, but your story may one way or the other delay. But at the end of the day, it's good to have good networks. Yeah, maybe you need to interview maybe a CEO of one of the companies or one of the organizations, but he is not welcoming. He's not really willing to share with you the information. Either he or she knows the information may kind of tarnish the name of the company or the image. But you need to have some networks. Maybe you can have someone who is trustworthy, and also you need to be someone who can be trusted, right? Because someone can be willing to share with you very key information, but provided that you are not maybe ending up exposing him or her. So the CEO may not be willing to share with you the information, But at the end of the day, you may find if you're having a good relationship with maybe some of the officers in that office, they can easily help you as a journalist getting the very right information. And at the end of the day, you'll not just report on rumors, but you're having the facts. So when you find there's an obstacle or there's kind of a not cooperation, there's no cooperation by the authority, you are forced to use your own networks. As a journalist, the very key, the bottom line is having good networks and you having develop a trust to your sources so that they can really share with you the information. Provided at the end of, as much as your story does not have an authority, someone who has replied on you on the story, but if you are having facts that are they are not altered, yeah, not doctored information, not doctored figures, through your own networks from these offices, then you'll be good to go. So I think that's the fight I can respond. I don't know whether I've answered you.
Thanks so much, Hezron. And we actually have another question specifically for Jennifer in the Nigerian context. One person from the audience, Bumi, if I'm pronouncing it right, has asked you, how can journalists advocate for the enactment of environmental laws in Nigeria when these laws are seemingly weak, with weak punishments for environmental criminals?
Sorry, I didn't get that. Is it on the chat? How can Nigerian journalists do what?
Yeah. How can Nigerian journalists advocate for the enactment of environmental laws in Nigeria when the laws are seemingly weak and even the punishment for environmental criminals are weak? What do you think journalists can do about this?
Okay. Actually, that proponent, or one of the proponents, I believe that you are a journalist first and not, and that your reporting is the way that you advocate. So the only thing you can actually really do is to keep reporting. And if there are laws already that you feel like you want to look at, that the implementation is not working on, you can actually write a story. Take, for instance, if you're writing a story about in the agricultural sector and there's a law that certain actions are in breach of, or there's a law that says, okay, fine, if we had this law, this won't be happening, you can hold someone accountable for doing this. The story that my friend actually did, I mentioned about in Abuja. So he was able to look at the law and say, okay, fine, you guys are operating on this land and it's illegal. And this is what you're doing. You are hurting people's health. Those kind of stories, actually, it will help push the hands of the authority. And there was an impact from that story because at the end of the day, the company was shut down. They moved. They had to leave. And that for me, it's already a big step. It's a huge step. So our job as journalists is to gradually ease in that change that we're looking for. It could be a little bit, if I'd say you march to the National Assembly, I'm very sure that the person that asked this question is a journalist. That could be out of the way. That could be out of the line for you. But the one thing I think we will do is to keep doing strategic reporting and always try to implement or to bring in the investigative part in every report that you do, because investigations is definitely supposed to expose something. And in doing so, you hold someone accountable. And what happens is that the people that are supposed to step up really. So that's how I think that we can keep pushing to get the laws. It's not just climate laws that are not implemented, but there's so many laws around in Nigeria rather, but in this context, just have to keep doing very good stories, very good fact-finding stories that are impactful. That's what I have to say, really.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And just to add on what you said, I think this applies to all of Africa, really. I don't know of any country where environmental laws are actually really enforced. And I think this is where journalism comes in. The more we report on it, the more we expose corruption and the government not doing its proper job when it comes to environmental stuff, the more you're able to push those people and add more pressure for them to do their job better. And I think this is really where journalists can change these laws and can actually pressure the government into doing stuff. I want to call on Jonathan if you're with us. You wanted to share some insights. Jonathan?
Yeah. Good
Yes,
afternoon,
please go
colleagues.
ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you. I want to appreciate you for accepting my application to join this group. I'm a lecturer at the Department of Mass Communication, Macpherson University in Nigeria, and I specialize in risk communication. I've done some research in climate change and health communication. Yeah, I want to totally agree with Ezron on the inclusion of climate reporting, climate journalism in mass communication or journalism curriculum. There's nothing we do, there's nothing we can advocate for if climate journalism is not included in journalism curriculum. And I think that is an essential area that our advocacy should begin from. So this inclusion should be conscious, perhaps by lobbying lawmakers and all other regulators in the education sector. So I believe that situating climate journalism within the four walls of the classroom would be one of the most important steps to take in advancing in advancing climate journalism in Africa. Now, as a researcher, I want to talk about creating a synergy between climate reporters and scholars. There is a gap between what we are doing as researchers and what journalists are reporting. So there is no bridge, there is no cohesion, there is no relationship between scholars, researchers, another time, between researchers and climate reporters. So there is a need for a forum between these two important parties. So whatever researchers, whatever scholars are showing out, journalists have to become aware. For instance, excessive research has been done in the area of CAP, knowledge, attitude, and practices of climate change prevention and control. Research has been done on early warning signs of climate change. Research has been done on responses of people to climate change risk. All of these are just lying on our shelves. There are no platform for us as researchers to communicate these laudable research findings to the public. For instance, awareness about climate change is still very low in Nigeria. And you know, Nigeria is the largest country in sub-Saharan Africa, in Africa. So whatever we are doing regarding climate change, Nigeria must be in the front. Nigeria must be in the front. So there is a need for advocacy to bring together researchers and climate reporters so that whatever our findings are, reporters will be able to relate these findings to the public so that the society will become aware of their attitude, of the level of their knowledge, whether their attitude or their predispositions to climate change is acceptable or not, is favorable or not, and also how they can improve on the practice of climate change control. Again, I also want to talk about creating.
Sorry, Jonathan, can you keep it brief because we're over time, so I'm going to give you 30 minutes to summarize.
Thank you very
30
much.
seconds.
That's my most important point that I want to make. There's a need for a synergy between researchers and climate journalists. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Jonathan, for your contribution and for this comment. We're really over time, so But I want to end, and I just want to tell everyone that you can, if you want to get in touch with Jennifer or Hezron, please reach out to us and we can put you in touch with them. Before we end, I just want to get 1 minute answer from Hezron and Jennifer to this question. What would be your advice for a junior climate journalist in Africa who's just starting to work on climate change issues? What would be 1 or 2 advices that you would give them? I'll start to Jennifer and then we can have Hezron.
Okay, so I think that the first thing first is be sure that that's what you want to do. I mean, because there's a possibility that it's not really easy the way it is. But when you're sure that that's what you want to do and you're starting out, you need to build your connection. That is you need to collaborate, have a very good, strong network of climate reporters already. Because if you have this network, what it will help you do is that you have a better understanding of what climate reporting really is. There are so many reports that you would call climate reporting, but they're not really climate reporting, or they're not climate reporting based. And another thing is to understand the technical aspect or the scientific aspect in climate reporting. Take your time, try to understand it. And the things that you don't understand, please feel free to reach out to someone to explain it to you. I still reach out to scientists, I still call chemists to tell me or explain certain things. And that's why when, I can't remember his name, but when the scholar, he was talking about climate journalists collaborating with scholars, you have to put yourself out there also, and as a scholar yourself, to interact or to reach out to journalists. And also for the person that is starting off first, build that network of your what you would call your experts, because you need expert opinion. I think that's what I have for now. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. Hezron, I'll head to you.
Yes. First of all, allow me to really say thank you for the opportunity to share on this platform, to have a discussion. And for the young journalists, maybe who they're interested. One, as my colleague Jennifer has said, you need to have a good network, because you can't really work without network. You cannot work as an individual alone. You need to have a very good network, and you need to be someone who can be trusted by sources, because some of there are journalists who sources give you information, but one or the other you go and maybe you share or you leak the information or the facts that he or she has shared with you. So first of all, build your trust with your sources so that they can, at any given time, they can feel free to share with you information. And if not, maybe if not the authorities, someone who can still assist you getting the right information. And another thing, understand that you need also to work closely with a science organization, or maybe climate climate related to organizations. Like in your country, maybe in your own country, you may need to work closely with meteorological department, because these are the only people who can easily help you understand the effects and when will either the rain come or all this. So you need to, this is all working around the network, good network within your reach. And another thing is you need to be aggressive enough, because nothing comes easy. You need to be aggressive enough to ask those tough questions. You need to be aggressive enough to dip into your pocket, as much as it is still a challenge. But again, you need to have that self-driven, to go out of your way, spend the little money to get that extra knowledge that will help you or improve your way of reporting. And lastly, you need to, at some point, it may be a kind of it may force you to be an activist, an activist, because journalist who is a kind of because at the end of the day you may be reporting, but nothing is coming out. So at the end of the day, what next? So you can also try to initiate yourself, having it all looking for that solution. And another one, you need also to have network. Yeah, network with your colleagues, because now, like I'm having Jennifer as my colleague here. I think she'll be able to network. She'll be able to share with me what is happening in her country, and also I'll be able to share with her what is happening in my country and across the board. So bottom line, we need to have a good network. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hezron, and thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm sure everyone in our audience will definitely benefit from these really valuable advices. I sure am. And thank you all again for joining our discussion. Before we end, I want to remind you all, and speaking of opportunities for journalists in Africa to report on climate change, Climate Tracker has launched a COP26 fellowship program. For those of you who are interested in covering the COP26, which will be happening next November, you can head to our website or our app to get more information about the opportunity and how you can participate. As a journalist from Africa, you're eligible to apply. So please go ahead and send us your application. If you need any support, please reach out to us and we can support you in filling your application. Thank you again so much for joining this first African Community Hangout. Like I mentioned, this is our first Hangout, so please, if you have any comments on what we can do better next time and on what we should have done this time, please let us know, because this is going to be a continuous thing and we want it to develop and become better and better every time. And we would really like to get everyone involved. So if you want to get involved in the next Community Hangout, please reach out to us.